So I think that's the place for financial therapy is if you can't think about money without having a somatic reaction, if you get a lump in your throat, if you start sweating, if you want to run out of the room or stick your head in the ground, if you're in a relationship where you can't bring money into conversation without going into immediate conflict that's escalating, if you can't change your behavior, if you know that something is off and you just can't get to that shift, that's where you bring in someone in my field to help you understand and heal. And then the behavior just most of the time, the behavior happens after the healing. You heal, and then you have the incentive and the ability and the understanding to go forward in a different way.
Mama says namaste.
Mama says namaste.
Making a family can be easy and fun.
Oh yeah, but raising a family can be a whole different story.
From spouses to kids to the crazy daily grind, life often directs us away from connection and more into reactive chaos.
If you're tired of that cycle and are seeking something beyond the picket fence blues, this is the show for you.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're here to take you from chaos to clarity by bringing awareness and intention into your home, not waiting for one day, and highlighting how
the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama Says Namaste.
All right. I am back today with another guest interview, and I am so excited to share this one for you. Just as a reminder for any of you that are listening in right now, if you are listening to this, with it being an interview, you also can hop over to YouTube, watch the video, or to make it super easy, you go to mamasaysnamaste.com and you will find the blog post that goes along with this, where I break down all the details of our conversation today. And I have a link to the podcast and the video, so you can access it in any way that you want. We want to make sure that we give you all the wonderful ways so that you can hear more about who it is that I'm interviewing. And today, even though I say interview, let's go ahead and scratch that, because it's not an interview. I love to have conversations with somebody. So I've got a few questions, but I happen to be bringing on a dear friend of mine I have known since I was 14 years old.
14?
Yep. 15th birthday. Yes. So I'm so happy to bring on Celia Hughes today. And she has been a dear friend of mine for a very long time, and has embarked into a profession that I think is so essential and valuable, especially in today's era. And I want to just have a conversation and share the insights on financial literacy, understanding, and what financial therapy is. So, Celia, thank you so much for being on with me today. And
I'm so excited.
Yes, I want to hear just a quick update for those who are listening on, who you are, what you're doing now, and also kind of what led you into doing this. I know finances have been something that you've been pretty savvy on since the beginning and have been very interested in. So share a little bit about what you're doing now and why.
Okay. I can rant, so just cut me off when we're like, okay, this is a short podcast, girl. I, in my younger years, was interested in psychology. I started as a psychology major in college and quickly shifted to business because of my own financial reasons. I just was ready to make money and didn't want to have a long drawn out I didn't want a long on-ramp to my career. And so I started working full-time. I went to school at night. I focused on business, and I landed in finance because it's natural for me. Numbers are easy for me. And I went on to get a master's degree in finance. I got an MBA in finance and was a controller for a company, and I was CFO for a company. And I worked with primarily with creative people who have brilliant minds, that are not attracted to the numbers. So I'm on this number side, working with just wild ideas and creating plans and structure to make the ideas come into reality. And there is no plan that you can make that will keep a creative person focused on the plan if they are not grounded and rooted. So I'm in this experience where I'm watching humans show up as humans. We've got a plan. If you can just follow it, if you can follow these steps, if you can do these things, we're looking at success. And then we show up as our human selves, and we show up with different ideas or anxiety or stress or distraction or whatever it is. But the humanity comes into the mix and really mucks up anything that we've figured out. And so I was at a point where I had kids, and I was working. I was dealing with my own workaholic tendencies, and had stepped back and was really doing more consulting and working with small businesses, working with women, working with creatives, folks who needed a financial person like me. But I couldn't get away from how hard the humanity aspect of finance is, and how we're not addressing it because we keep coming at it from a numbers place and not from a human place. And so I was walking one day a few years ago, and I thought, oh my God, financial therapy should be a thing. I'm going to invent financial therapy. And I didn't invent it. I Googled it, and it's actually a thing. So here I am. I went back did a postgraduate certification in financial psychology, and working on my PhD in debt psychology, because I'm really interested in the unconscious belief systems that we have around money. But that's where I got here. There are plenty of finance people. There are plenty of number people. There are plenty of mental health people and therapists. There are very few of us who are in the middle looking at our relationships with money and how we feel about money, what beliefs we've inherited about money. So I'm in this gray space between numbers and diagnostic therapy.
Yes. Okay. And on that note, I know you talk about words have power. So what are some of these beliefs that you feel like are the blockage? Because I so agree with you that we look at the numbers, and yet it's the emotions that really are preventing us from the finances, or from the literacy or the savviness or the confidence. So what kind of things is it that you're hearing people say where you go, oh, this is a therapy situation, this is an opportunity for us to look at the humanity, not just the numbers?
I think that the words can be indicative of some deeper stuff to deal with. So we're looking at, I'm listening to what you say, and I'm listening for, is there something deep and unconscious here that you're not aware of that we need to unearth? And that's going to show up as multi-generational belief systems. You come from a Mennonite family. The financial beliefs around money in that lineage is going to eke down until someone unearths it and says consciously, these are the belief systems, and here's what I subscribe to, and here's why I don't. And this is where my conflict is that I'm living with a belief system that doesn't actually work for me. And then I'm also paying attention to the way that we talk about ourselves, because we can talk about ourselves in a way that doesn't allow for change. So if I come in, if a client comes in, if I come in and say, I'm bad at money, you're saying who you are. And a person who is bad at money makes decisions that are, and I don't want to label decisions as bad, because I'm not black and white about decision making. But when I say I am this way, I'm saying there's no room for me to do anything differently than I've done. So that's, I think, that power piece of, there's a real difference in saying, I have really made some choices with money that have hurt me financially. I have racked up a lot of debt that I wish that I didn't have. There are decisions I made that I wish I could go back and do them differently. That's a totally different conversation with a different set of outcomes than, I'm bad at money, hands up, there's nothing I can do about this. So it's like that's almost more coaching than the therapy, but shifting the way that we talk about ourselves is really important.
Oh yeah, those I am statements can so eat away at us, and become and we talk a lot on the podcast about fixed mindset and growth mindset. And when you have an I am statement that it's fixed, that there's nothing that you can do about it, it can be a helpless island to stand on, and you can get lost. So just the simple, and I love that you've got letters from Celia that come as an email. And I just read this one yesterday where you were talking about reframing your I am, and like, I've made some bad choices. That's a whole different deal. I can make bad choices, and that's not who I am. And we all do. We all are going to have those, because like you said, humanity comes in, and we have got lots of crazy, we got lots of curveballs, and we don't get it right all the time. That's not the issue. And it's not, I'm sitting here as I'm even writing my own email for my email list for this week for our podcast, and just talking about, it's not about avoiding the crazy in life. It's not about eliminating all stress and chaos in your life. It's
That's right.
at what tools do I have to equip me? So if somebody's
right.
coming into financial therapy with you, obviously you've already laid out your first thing is you're simply listening. You're listening for what kind of keywords, is there an I am statement that maybe digs into something deeper? So what does that process look like? Beyond that, beyond listening to them do that, what's the process? What would they expect coming into a financial therapist?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the person, right? I'm working with humans, and I stay away from rigidity of this is how I do things, because then I'm closing myself off to what works for you as a human, right? This work is about the person who's coming and sitting in my chair or sitting on my Zoom, more than it is about me being an expert. But the cadence of it is generally looking at it'll start as, and people are so funny because there's not a lot of us that do this. People come in ready to talk, so they sit down like, bleh! Like I don't have to ask a ton of questions for the first little chunk of time, but it's a combination of what's going on right now. What are you feeling right now? Is there some financial problem that we need to talk about that's brought you in, or is it just a sensation? I have people come in with plenty of wealth who are set up for the rest of their lives, who are dealing with extreme anxiety and stress because it's not about the money. Right. And then it always is going to lead back to, what did you experience growing up? What did you learn about growing up? How did your parents talk about money? There's a gender component. Did you grow up in a community that had expectations of men with money versus women with money? Did you grow up in a community where the expectation was that that you live in a multi-generational home where the middle generation takes care of the older folks who give childcare to the younger folks? Like there's many many-different community aspects in America that come in because we're multicultural. So understanding those are the roots of what was expected of you growing up. And then from there, if I'm working with couples, there's a lot of communication stuff to work through. The couples work is very different than the individual work, and fun. I love the couples work. But then it's kind of branching out into, how has this manifested in your life? And it's kind of like seeing these little pieces of a puzzle, and then clients have these aha moments where they have a realization, and that's a piece of the puzzle that clicks in, and then they have an aha about something else, and maybe they can start to see a big picture. But it's a lot of talking and unearthing. I send clients away with a lot of homework, journaling, things to be thinking about outside of this space. My part of the work is small. Your part of the work is significantly more than what you can do while actually sitting in the space with me. So encouraging people to go out and spend some time quietly reflecting on something that came up that's really juicy. Like this feels like a thing that could have guided the decision that I made down the road. So it's a lot of connecting the dots.
Yeah. And I love that. And yeah, I mean, I always, as a coach too, it's like, I want to say, here's what you can expect, but that's always going to vary, because our goals, is helping them to create the life they dream of. And where I'm looking at how we can cultivate and create starting from now moving forward, I definitely attest to the fact that often means we got to look back, and sometimes we got to really dig back a little bit to let go before we can move forward. And I just as a generic example, I'm sure you could kind of use this as an example, because I know I've discussed this in my own life with my husband, just talking about limiting beliefs and how we self-sabotage. And you see like a classic case of this, where you see somebody like an NFL player who has worked their way up. Now they're playing, and within a few years they're bankrupt. And we've had examples of this right there in Tennessee, where you are. And so just as an example of what you talk about, where we identify to it, there's an example of somebody who's brought a lot of money. What might have been some things that they could have done to prevent that happening?
Well, the only thing that can prevent that happening is there being an understanding about what happens psychologically when there's a change in socioeconomic status. And especially these athletic children who are coming into massive amounts of money, there needs to be so much education for them beforehand, which is, not going to happen anytime soon, but maybe one day. But when there is a windfall, whether it is an NFL contract situation, a lottery winning, I have yet to have a lottery winning client. So if you're listening and you've won the lottery, I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
I have many questions. Insurance, settlements, inheritances, anytime someone gets a chunk of money that changes their socioeconomic status, that is an anxiety ridden, stress invoking time of their lives. And what I have seen is that when people come into money, it exacerbates whatever financial struggle they've had in their lives. So if you are a little bit of a spender and you get a lot of money, you're going to be either an enormous spender, or you're going to shut down and not be willing to spend a dime because you're so scared of losing it. But when you are shifting socioeconomic status up or down, it's going to cause stress. And we don't talk about that because we assume you're losing money, that sucks. Losing money is bad. Gaining money, yay, that should solve all your problems. And it's absolutely not the case across the board.
Mm-hmm. Right. Gaining money can bring all kinds of things out of the woodwork when it comes to our own fears and anxieties, as well as the people knocking on our doors or anything else that can cause more complication and involvement. So yeah, once again, and I reference so often on these podcast episodes, what is our purpose for money? Money in and of itself is not going to do what we might hope it to do, because it's about the emotions wrapped around it. It's our understanding, our concept.
Yep.
Yeah, I know Celia mentioned earlier about me being, or about Mennonite background, because she knows me and my family, and I have Mennonite background. And so Mennonite background, culturally, in the Amish and Mennonite community, you are humble, you don't show pride, and to be proud of anything can be seen as a negative. So if I'm coming into finances realizing that I should be ashamed for having a lot of it, that's gonna taint my approach and how I'm navigating money, and I may not be the best steward of it for that reason, because of the fear that I'm bringing into it. It's so powerful to look into what our emotions are around money and figure out how we can also just do checkpoints along the way. So what are some starting points? I mean, if somebody is listening and they're just kind of, I don't really know how to let go of where I'm at, but let's start. I'm not a numbers person. I'm not good with money, and I'm really struggling because I'm also in survival mode right now. What would be kind of some first steps, or where would you encourage them to start looking first?
Okay, so we're talking about an emotional sense, and we're talking about a number sense. So this is a person who has some financial issues that they want to address. Something is not working financially, and they are hurting or afraid or whatever it is.
I would scare me, and I'm in survival mode. So what do I do?
So I would start with ignoring that financial piece. Whatever you're doing to survive, you can keep surviving on that for another month or two while we care for whatever needs to be cared for inside inner child work or values work. And so what I would start talking about, and if I have someone who is in a shame place, I'm going to start with talking about where the shame comes from. What did you hear about money growing up? What's your story about money? Did your parents have money? Did your parents fight about money? Was money used as a way to control in your family? What were the expectations put on you, and have you met those expectations, or have you failed those expectations? So with that shame piece, I'm going to start young and really try to understand the foundation of your relationship with money. And then as we start looking at these milestone moments that will come up, well, then I took out a giant loan to go to college and now I can't pay it off and I wish that I hadn't. Okay, well, what was happening then? Did anyone talk to you about what it looks like to pay off a 6-figure student loan? Was the expectation that you go to an impressive school? Did you go to an impressive school to defy your family? Like what was in that decision? And then at every layer, there's some compassion. Oh, no one talked to you about what it's like to pay off a 6-figure loan, and you were a teenager, you were 18 years old, not old enough to drink alcohol, and they let you sign those loans. That's really hard. There's compassion there. I can see how you got into that place. And then it trickles up to, I did the thing, I didn't budget, I spent all the money, and now I don't have retirement. Okay, well, how did that come to be? What was the expectation there?
Yeah.
Again, did anyone ever talk to you about the importance of saving? Do you feel worthy of having a retirement? Do you feel worthy of having a healthy future? And often there's a self-confidence piece there. It's like, no, I don't actually, I've never even I've never thought about my future because I don't feel worthy of that. So then we're going to dig into that worthiness piece, but it's really just kind of starting at the bottom and stopping wherever there's resistance and spending time in that place. So start telling your money story. Pause there when you get to a place that gives you a knot in your throat, and spend some time there and look for the self-compassion. When you can get to the point where it's like, I am where I am. I have made some mistakes. Maybe I've done nothing right. I'm sure we could find something that you have done right. And here's where I am. And I can have compassion for how I got here. I didn't know better. Often it's that we don't know better because we don't talk about money. We expect people to be fantastic with money with no education, no resources.
Exactly.
Or a very rigid list of, this is how you're good with money. You need to do all these things. And if you don't do all these things, then you're not smart with money. There's shame in that. So it's just with every person, it's finding that spot that's really painful and just sitting with it and seeing what comes up when you dig a little deeper in that spot. Does that make sense?
Very.
Did I explain that well?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, once again, the answer to everything out there starts within, and it's looking at where is our mindset, because we're all writing different stories. We can all look at the exact same thing and we're going to see it from a different perspective. And the story of the blind man and the elephant, they're all arguing about the elephant. I'll put a link to Natalie Merchant's song on it because I love it. I reference this in my Discovering You course where I share it because it's such a great analogy of all these blind men holding onto a different part of the elephant and arguing, it's clearly a fan. It's clearly like a spear. It's clearly like all of these other things, but an elephant that nobody's actually seeing, but it's the different vantage points. And when we look at any of these external things like money and finances, or even health and wellness, we're still looking at what's the core here. What's one thing that is in my control, and where can I go from here? And that's our inner thoughts and our mindset and our perspective on it.
Yep.
And that right there, that's a great insight for just looking at anybody who's listening to this, who's feeling like they are struggling financially or struggling with their mindset around finances, is first looking at, where did that come from? And where can you go from here? And I personally, having come from understanding, like learning and having fear around money and then learning how to navigate money, exactly what you're talking about. It seems counterintuitive when somebody is stressed about money to throw money out the window and focus on their feelings. Yet when you do, by the time you get to the money, there's a whole different feeling about it. And
we in America are trained to look for fixes.
Yes.
And there aren't fixes in humanity. There's healing. And I'm hesitant. I'm always hesitant to bring this comparison in because I feel really protective of the human body and the way that we abuse it and the way we abuse it in the case of image. But a comparison is diet culture, right? Like someone comes in and says, here's my plan. You should eat this way and do these things. And in 30 days, you will, whatever it is. We know, all studies show that diets don't work, period, hands down. The more you diet, the worse off you are. The weight comes back higher every time. It is bad for your body. It messes with your metabolism. But we're looking for that. Just, I don't want to do the work. The work is so hard. Just tell me what to do. And then we're prescribing something that, I don't know, maybe it works. I'm sure every diet works for someone for some amount of time. But this is the human body. We don't even understand the human body yet. And yet we're saying that you can eat these specific things and don't eat these specific things. And that's the right thing for every single person. That's what finance culture has become. Like finance bro culture is that. Do these things, follow these steps, and then you'll be fine. But we know that the amount of money you have, your financial status, does not change the way that you feel about money.
Right.
We are not accustomed to sitting still in the hard stuff and continuing the work. We want to just do it for a minute and then do a quick weekend and come out feeling great. And it's not the case. Finance is your healthy relationship with money is as varied and can look as differently as every variation of a healthy body. What works for you and for Nathan is not what works for Justin and for me, is not what works for this person, is not what works for this person. And it takes work and so in my work, I use the language of values. It's something that I do with every client, with every couple, is understanding your values, because you have to know who you are and what matters to you before you can address a financial plan. And there are some rules that apply to everyone. Everyone needs to have retirement. This is America. We don't have a government funded pension system. We're all responsible for our own retirement. So yeah, you do have to focus on that. Credit card debt is ridiculous. The interest rates are painful. Yes, we need to address credit card debt. So there's some rules, but beyond that, it's completely independent, and we as Americans are not trained to know ourselves that well.
Mm-hmm. And one note on retirement for the entrepreneurs that are listening that are saying, well, I don't plan on retiring, I will work forever. Let's talk about that just being, what is your plan when you may not be physically or mentally able? What are you doing? Right. Because I have seen so many entrepreneurs that have figured out ways to have money coming in and never thought about that time frame. And we personally in our own family have experienced the elderly who have had a stroke, who have suffered from dementia, right, who have lived 20 years longer than expected, because we also have a higher life expectancy, and they don't have anything covered. So regardless of whether you're working a traditional job or whether you are a straight up entrepreneur doing your own thing, think of retirement as your elderly life care, period.
That's Everybody right. That's right. And a way to think about that is if you have some sort of illness, like I think illness is a place that we can all tap into. We all know someone who has had an out of the blue, a stroke that has changed their ability to work, or terminal cancer diagnosis, or, something that we all know someone that we can tap into when we need to bring some reality into this. If you have not prepared for that time in your life, what happens? You are dependent on the government, which means you are dependent on potentially government housing. If you don't own your home, or if you still have a mortgage, you're dependent on where they can put you. It's lack of control of your life, or you're dependent on your kids. In some cultures, that's planned for. In some cultures, there's multi-generational care. But if you belong to a culture where it's each man for themselves, how do you feel about asking your children to provide for you, your adult children who potentially have their own kids? How would that feel to you? Like sit and imagine what it would be like to go to your kids and say, I thought I was going to work for the rest of my life and I can't. Can you help me pay my mortgage?
Yeah.
Or you can prepare for that day and your children will thank you.
Yes. So much so.
That's my personal preference.
Well, and I have to say, yes, it seems like hard work to dig into all of this stuff. And oh my gosh, I mean, think of parenting in general. Which is harder work? Sitting with your child when they're screaming at you constantly, interrupting you, and trying to just have a conversation when you've got the child screaming next to you.
Mm-hmm.
You can take a week of boot camp of every single time that child does it, reminding the child that if they put their hand on your arm, and then I'm using this as a personal example because I did this in my household, the child put the hand on my arm and simply wait. And so I respect them enough to acknowledge and give them time and not make them wait forever. They respect me enough to stay quiet and not scream at me when I'm talking to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
That took a week of a pain in the butt for me. It took time for me having to interrupt and have awkward conversations with other people on, hey, I really need to just cut you off right now because I need to deal with what's right in front of me. It was hard, it was annoying, and it was a week that gave me a childhood of kids that I enjoyed being around, that I didn't dread when they walked in, because I knew they weren't going to be screaming at me while I was going to have a conversation with someone else. So the hard work is fleeting compared to the payoff that you can get. And so when you look for the easy buttons, you got to double, check yourself on, what is this easy button really going to give me? Is it just prolonging the inevitable stress that I'm still having? My easy button of what I'm going to do just to pay the bill this week.
Yeah.
You have a concept called life math.
I love life math.
What is life math? And share that.
Yeah. So I believe that there are 3 pieces of financial health, and that is basic financial literacy, life math, and emotional honesty. The life math piece is the math that you need to do to be a well-functioning adult in this world. We in our school system, in our traditional school system, take kids through, depending on the path, I would say at least through algebra 2. And then if you're a math person or in honors courses, you're looking at trigonometry or pre-calculus or even calculus. In life, you need about 1 week of basic algebra to be a well-functioning adult. And so we have this stigma around math, and we put the stigma on kids when they are very young in school. You are either a math kid or you are not a math kid. I am a math kid, and I wore that as a badge of honor because there weren't a lot of this, and it was treated as like,
oh, not the math kid. So I completely, yeah.
Yeah, and you end up like, I'm not a math person. I'm like, I am a math person. Yeah. Let me tell you how much calculus I do in real life. I don't. I don't do any calculus ever. I do 0 trigonometry, and I was so good at it. When you label a child that way, they carry it with them forever. And so you get into, someone who is bad at math will look at numbers and be like, I'm not capable of this. I'm not capable of being good at money because I am not a math person. Almost everyone, short of an intellectual disability that prohibits it, can do addition and subtraction and can do basic multiplication and division. And that's all you need. It's really helpful to know how to do the function on your phone to find a sales tax percentage or a discount or something like that. That's all you need. And so life math is just changing the way that we think about whether or not we're good at math, and acknowledging that there is school math and there is some career math, and then there's just life math, and we can all do life math. So you can just be good at it. You can just own that you're good at math because you have all the math that you need to be a well-functioning adult.
Oh, I love that. And I actually just this week watched a TED Talk with my family on and I'll share it in the blog that goes along with this, because it's on why it was an argument on why we don't need higher level math in school. And it was a guy saying exactly what you just said. As we have had our children going through con, and our second, one child who loves learning and soaks up every bit of it, the second one going, when am I ever going to use calculus in my life? And I'm going, I don't. Yep. So what's the need? And it prompted great conversation in our home about, about doing things and that delight-led learning. I recognize that, yes, when calculus is needed in those specific professions, that trigonometry or calculus or any of these other things are needed, I will be incentivized because I have that desire to go into that profession. I will be incentivized and desire to learn those things. And if we can open up, we give ourselves a little bit more grace when it comes to what we're learning and recognizing what is really life skill applicable. I think, yes, life math would be great. Life English would also be another helpful one here. There's so many aspects of it. Boy, if we put life in front of it, gives you a lot of freedom to focus on what's really valuable for you now. And if you have a growth mindset, you can always be open to learning the other steps when needed.
That's right. And I think it's the identity piece. Like, it's separating what you need to exist in this world safely, with autonomy, with independence, with healthy relationship, being able to communicate in a way that is effective. Like, that's life pieces. And then let the other stuff just be advanced learning in one area or the other, And I think I like the fullness of the high school curriculum because I like that you get to play with things. And it's like undergrad. Like undergrad's just second 4 years of high school, getting to play with things and see what lights you up, because maybe you don't know that you're interested in economics until you have played with that piece. And calculus is a course that you have to take. It's an aptitude you have to have for economics. So I like the play and finding it. I just don't like the implications of not being great at something. Like,
oh, that's so great. That's so true.
it's the failure piece, you know?
Yes, because again, growth mindset isn't failure. It's not yet. I haven't learned it yet. There's always the yet opportunity. And so often, I feel like we can be trapped in the things we pass or fail in high school. Like that's our only time to learn. Yet, it doesn't stop at 12th grade. It doesn't stop after high school or after college or master's or PhD. My goal is to raise lifelong learners and to be a lifelong learner. That means that door is always open. So if we give ourselves a little bit permission to not know everything, but we also do the hard work to gain confidence in those few things that are so valuable for our lives, how much will our lives be enriched? And that'd be a whole different shift. Oh,
and also, how about we start celebrating not being great at things? Like I was a good student, which is a useless skill set outside of when you are actually a student, but it's highly celebrated. So I had a lot of confidence in my academic ability for whatever it is, but also I keep going to school. So it is a little bit helpful for me, which is probably why I keep going to school, because I'm good at it. But my kids go to Waldorf school, and one of the subjects that they have in Waldorf school is handwork. So from kindergarten on, they are doing tactile handwork stuff. And my daughter was learning to knit in first grade. And they asked for parent volunteers to come to class because the class was big and they just needed more parents. And she said, the handwork teacher said, you don't have to know how to knit. I'll teach you. Like, we'll get together before, but just enough that you can help the kids. And I was like, cool. I want to know what my kids are learning. And they're learning different things than I did. So I tried to learn how to knit. I can't knit. I can't knit to save my life. It hurts my fingers. It looks stupid. I mean, and I keep attempting. And my children, who are both master knitters at this point, like roll their head back laughing at me when I try to, and it looks, I mean, it's horrible. And there's so much joy in it. Like, I can't do this. You guys can do this. I cannot do this. And the laughter that comes with that failure is really important. Like, I'm trying to say it. It's so bad, Ashley. You can knit, can't you?
No, I did.
Okay. Do you crochet?
It completely escaped me. No, that's completely Clara's thing. I have tried. But I've lacked the desire to push through, I think, to get to the point of knitting, maybe. But
because it's hard.
It is. And
it's also math.
That's exactly what it was, because I decided that for me, where I wanted to find joy was something that I could do with my hands that did not require much thinking with my brain, so I could listen to the constant dialogue going on in my household and be a part of it instead of shutting people out when I did a hobby. And I found that when I was crocheting or knitting or cross stitch, which I did, I was sitting there counting, counting. And so I stopped for that reason. And I found, the ones where it's all stamped on, I just do an easy embroidery, and it gives me my fun handwork without having to count and do everything. So But to your point, though, celebrating when we aren't the greatest at something may also be opening the door to celebrate somebody else who is great. Like, you're able to say, oh my gosh, I could learn from you. You inspire me, and you're showing me something I haven't developed the skill set for in your kid. Yeah. How incredible is that? Again, it goes with my tagline that we'll be wrapping this up with: the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. It's when we see that we can celebrate those strengths in other people, that we all can benefit from it. I am not the herpetologist that Clara is, and that my daughter Clara is, and I sure as heck don't know half of the biology and taxonomy and all of the Latin names for everything that she does. It's incredible. And I am not going to, and I don't feel the need to do that myself. I can celebrate that in her, and it reinforces my desire to have her in my life because of that positive connection of her skill adding to me without me having to do it myself. We can celebrate the things we aren't good at and recognize our easy button may simply be appreciating somebody else that does it well and bringing them into our lives. And I think that's a good statement also for why to have a financial therapist. Maybe you're not great at this. And instead of beating yourself up about it or forcing yourself to muscle through it alone, maybe you celebrate someone who thrives in the opportunity to help you see it in a different way. And you go and you get the support that you need to step out of that.
Yeah. And I think, there aren't a lot of herpetologists. That's very specific. And there aren't a lot of financial therapists. The problem is that we're not all expected to know what Claire knows, right? Like that's a unique interest of hers. It's a unique interest of my son Buster's. Like that belongs to them, and that's great. However, we are all expected to be experts at finance without the exposure, without the education, without the cultural healing. And so that's the piece that's so tricky is we celebrate some of these things as unique. And then this one, the lane that I'm in, there's so much shame and so much identity wrapped up in not being financially healthy and proficient. Adding on that no one even knows what financial health means, So I think that's the place for financial therapy is if you can't think about money without having a somatic reaction, if you get a lump in your throat, if you start sweating, if you want to run out of the room or stick your head in the ground, if you're in a relationship where you can't bring money into conversation without going into immediate conflict that's escalating, if you can't change your behavior, if you know that something is off and you just can't get to that shift, that's where you bring in someone in my field to help you understand and heal. And then the behavior just most of the time, the behavior happens after the healing. You heal, and then you have the incentive and the ability and the understanding to go forward in a different way.
Yes. All right. So, in keeping this short and sweet, obviously there's so much here, and I am so thankful to have you on. I've been wanting to have you on for so long because I can talk all day long about money and everything else, and it still boils down to how you feel about it. And sometimes you've got to step outside of yourself in order to see what your blind spots are, and ask for help is a noble thing. It is not a weakness or giving up. It's investing in yourself, and it's investing in the life and the future that you want to create. All right. Any last words and how we can find you and learn more about financial therapy? And of course, I'm advocating out of all those little financial therapists out there, I vote Celia. I really have learning about all of this, and you've been the person that's opened the door for me to even learn about it because again, before you, I had not heard of a financial therapist.
Thank you so much for having me on. I know we've been planning this for 2 years. 2 years we've been trying to get this on the books.
Right.
I'm so glad to talk to you about it. You can follow me on Instagram. I just I post little pieces of information and encouragement, and with always a hair of absurdity. My Instagram handle is _Celia Roberts Hughes. And my website is CeliaRobertsHughes.com. You can go to my website and sign up for my email list to get on my the list for my weekly letters. I've got a couple new programs that I'm going to be rolling out in a few weeks. So if you want to get on the email list, you'll get information about those. And then I work with people individually if anyone wants to work with me, or if a couple wants to work with me. But also I have a program called Money Roots, which is a self-guided. It's guided by me. It's a self-timed program. You can go on once a day and listen to I kind of go through all the topics that could cover. I go through cultural stuff and multi-generational stuff and on through childhood and adulthood and retirement. So it's a way to do some of this work on your own with prompts, with information and prompts. And it's affordable and accessible to folks who aren't going to come in and work with me. So that's a nice way to just start thinking about your relationship with money in a guided way. Yeah. Those are the big ways to reach me.
Yes. And when you sign up for your newsletter, you get like a 14-day series.
Yeah.
Yes. Which that series is so helpful. I signed up for it and I read through them with my family and helped them to understand, because it's got big scary words for some people on what things are and what things mean and how to relate it in real life to what's going on in your world. And so I am a huge advocate for financial therapy, for going deeper than just the money, but looking beyond the numbers to the emotions around it, and seeking the support of people just like Celia that can help you to gain confidence on what your purpose for money is, how to cultivate it, create it, and be good stewards of it in your life. And ultimately, how to celebrate how the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. Namaste. Thank you.
1, 2, 3. Up with the rising sun, already on the run. Mama says namaste. Life is a tangled mess, and you don't have to stress. Mama says namaste. 'Cause today I will stand up and be all the change that I want to see in this world. Boys and girls, you gotta have to stand up to be free. Namaste in your heart. Take a deep breath in, then let's start a brand new day. With Mama says namaste.